Okay, so we've talked briefly about what happens when you want to initially sell a security. Well, now you've gotten it so that you can sell the security. Now what applies? Well, the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, this regulates the transfer of securities after the initial sale. Okay, so it's public. You got to file forms with the stock exchange and the SEC, and you got to give them periodic reports so that investors know what they're buying, etc., etc. And this goes into, when you talk about, stuff on the Dow, stuff that's changed on the exchange in the New York Stock Exchange, that sort of thing. You can get that information because it's required to be on file with the SEC. Now, these laws affect business persons, accountants, lawyers, and even investors. Now, Section 10b and Rule 10b-5, it is unlawful to use the mails or interstate commerce on National Securities Exchange to defraud in security transactions. Well, this makes sense. I mean, keep in mind, this was started back in the 30s. We had the stock market crash, and we were trying to come up with ways to regulate the stocks so that they would be safer. We could manipulate them. And again, this all goes into, do you want a hands-on market or a laissez-faire market? Yada yada yada. Well, they were trying to fix what occurred on Black Friday. Now, when you're dealing with something like this, you got to think to yourself, are there damages? And believe it or not, when you're dealing with any cause of action, you always want to think, are there damages? Now, in a situation where someone has been defrauded, the plaintiff has to prove out-of-pocket losses, so dollar losses, expenses of that were paid and received, or excuse me, excess of paid and received, and measured at the time of the purchase. So you got to have actual damages that have to be shown. Remember, if you don't have damages, you probably don't have a cause of action. Now, materiality. Again, we looked at this at the initial phases of bringing a security public, but you also, you have to show that there was a material misrepresentation or omission in connection with the purchase or sale of a security. And that's why it's so important that whenever you have these securities, that you file everything with the SEC and you have everything accurate. Now, what about insider transactions? I'm sure most of you have heard about stuff like this. Martha Stewart, she was one that was fairly recent. But you got to talk about, what is an insider? An insider owns more than 10% of the company, or a director or an officer. Okay. Now, once you become one of these two things, you must file with the SEC within 10 days of becoming an insider. Now, what they're trying to do is they're trying to prevent people from making a large profit from knowledge of what's going on with the company. Now, when we say this, we talk about short swing profits. And this is any profit made in a 6-month time period. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, golly, geez, is it really that bad to make money? No, it's not. It's just whenever you use that information that you're privileged to take advantage of the company, take advantage of the markets. But there's non-public information out there. Now, certainly, those insiders could tell a tippee. It's a person who learns of non-public information from an insider and then uses that knowledge to make extra money in the stock market, and thus again takes advantage of the information that's known. Now, when you do situations like this, there can be civil and criminal liability, and again, what they're trying to do is allow the market to be free by regulating it. And it's sort of, if you think about it for a few minutes, you see where the SEC is coming from, but at the same time, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, why don't we just leave it alone and just let the market do whatever? Well, it is what it is.